and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I wanted to do a bit of a show and tell video. I will be showing you a couple of costumes that I have made, and I will also show you the patterns that I used to make those costumes. So the first one that I wanted to take a look at is my Kogyoku Jinikip from Mae-Gwyn. I used a full bodysuit pattern. In fact, I used Yaya Han's bodysuit pattern. The code for it is M7217. I ended up using this pattern to make the bulk of the bodysuit for Kogyoku. I did make some modifications. As you can see, there is that whole front part that's exposed on Kogyoku's actual costume. So what I did was I modified the front of the pattern to make that gape. And what I did was I kind of reinforced it with some clear vinyl that kind of straps across. I also made the appliques on the side using this pattern as well. I just used the same side pieces and then I just kind of cut out where I wanted my applique to be and what it to look like, and so on from there. As with any pattern, you really should make a mock-up of it first to see how it fits. For instance, this pattern here was a little short for me on the torso and in the legs, so I had to lengthen it a little bit in both of those regards. The next costume I want to look at is my Howl costume from Howl's Moving Castle. For Howl, I really wanted to focus on the shirt and the jacket. So for the shirt, I ended up going with like a standard medieval men's type of shirt. I did modify it so that the collar was a little bit different and so that I also had that kind of ruffled front that Howl has in the movie. I also added my own cuffs because these cuffs are elasticized, so I made my own cuffs for this pattern. This pattern was pretty easy to work with. This is the Butterick 4574. For the jacket, I ended up using this pattern here. It is Simplicity's 5840. So I modified it to make it shorter, jacket length, obviously. And I also took away the hood when I made this. Now, the actual diamond pattern, I hand appliqued diamonds onto the jacket, so those pieces were drafted by hand, but the basic shape was with this pattern here. Next up, I want to talk about my Ruby Moon cosplay. So for Ruby Moon, I really wanted to have a genuine cheongsam pattern, so I ended up going with the pattern from Folkwear. This is the Hong Kong cheongsam. So I took this pattern and I modified it a little bit. It didn't need too much tweaking. I really just needed to kind of change the width because it is a little bit tight on me, as well as adjust the length of the slit for the costume. So Folkwear has a lot of really good traditional clothing patterns. If you wanted to take a look at more historical fashion, you can take a look here and check out what they have. Now, I have made a couple of Sailor Moon cosplays in my cosplay career. I first made Sailor Jupiter way back at the beginning when I started, and then I revamped up my skills and made Sailor Saturn a couple years ago. Both costumes used this pattern from the Green Pepper Company. It is code F813, and I used the sleeveless version. The thing I really like about this pattern is that it actually has a seam that goes along the hip, which is perfect for inserting your pleated skirt for your Sailor Moon character. I did have to adjust this pattern a little bit. I had to adjust it in the length because of my fabric not being as stretchy as it should have been. I also adjusted the neckline to make it more of a V shape for the sailor collar that I would attach later. And I also split apart the crotch and put some snaps in and then lengthened it so that I could go to the bathroom really easily. The last costume I want to talk about is my Priestess Diet. I used quite a few patterns to construct the kind of basis of this dress. There was a lot of stuff that I drafted myself, such as the sleeves and the gloves. But for the actual dress and the obi, I did have to use patterns that I did heavily modify for this costume. To start off with, I took this top pattern here, this tube top pattern here. It is McCall's 6838, and I used this for the top of the dress. Now I did have to add in that top seam to separate the white from the red. I also had to modify it a little bit because it was a little big in the bust area. So that's what I used for the top of the dress. For the bottom of the dress, I wanted to take a pencil skirt and modify it so that it was like a wrap. And it also had like that trim that kind of went around it. So I ended up using this pattern, which is McCall's M7507. Obviously I had to heavily edit it to make it so that it was a wrap and not just like, you know, the straight pencil. But it had the right silhouette that I was kind of looking for. I wanted a nice kind of straight cut to the skirt that did wrap around. Last but not least, that weird obi thing. So I actually took a princess themed dress pattern for this and kind of chopped off the top and chopped off most of the bottom and then kind of created that edge that you see in the actual garment. I went with this pattern here. This is Simplicity's 1773 pattern. I used the short dress version and I only used a couple of pattern pieces. Obviously I didn't need to use the sleeves if I was just gonna cut the top and cut the bottom off. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of this content, you can always click subscribe. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye!